And so first up, we're going to have Romain. Where is he? There he is. And let me introduce him real quick. Well, do you want to get your laptop plugged in while we do that? So Romain is an entrepreneur currently building direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. Previously, he led the driver engagement team at Uber, founded, how do you say it? Meexo, acquired by Live Nation Entertainment. Was the head of mobile product at Lumosity and was part of the original iPhone team at Apple. Romain holds a Master's of Computer Science from the University of Technology of Compiegne and an MBA from Stanford University. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Romain. Big round of applause.
Thank you, David. All right, so let's talk about e-commerce. And I'm going to share with you a few lessons that I learned about how I was able to grow an e-commerce business from $0 to $1 million in about 6 months as a side business. I'm doing a few other things on the side, such as I'm helping companies to grow. I'm working on the other projects. So this is just like one thing, and I'm going to teach you things that I wish I knew before I started. So it's $1 million. It's not that impressive in Silicon Valley, right? But if you think about it, I raised zero capital. Maybe I started with a budget of like $500, $1,000, and I have 0 employees. I'm working with different contractors and partners. Fun fact, I'm working with people in Philippines, China, Mexico, Hawaii. I've never met anybody face-to-face. It's only virtual. And last but not least, this is something that I've been doing part-time. This is a screenshot of, it's one of my stores, the store that I'm going to talk about. It reached $1 million in 6 months and 15 days. So I should change the title of the presentation to 6 months and 15 days to be very, very accurate. So David mentioned a couple of things about my background. I worked at Apple, joined a company called Lumosity to start the mobile business back in 2008. Started a company called Meexo with Dave Yaginuma right there. He gave me the surprise to show up tonight. He was my co-founder. Meexo, you never heard about it. It was the first, as far as I know, the first dating app that had a swipe-based interface. We launched about a year before Tinder. We pivoted. We didn't make it. We pivoted. We sold the company to Live Nation, and then I joined a company called Uber that you heard about, and I was working on driver engagement. The reason why I wanted to tell you this is because I'm just like you. I worked in Silicon Valley for quite a while. And while I worked on growth across all these different companies, I never worked on e-commerce. I never bought media. I never worked on email marketing. All these things I've been new for the last 1.5 years, 2 years from now. So if I was able to do it, you can too. And you know why? Because I never dreamt about success. I worked for it. And that's really, really, really what it takes. If you believe in it, if you believe you can do it, you can. Before I move forward, I'd like to poll the audience. How many of you work full-time at an e-commerce company? So I see a few hands. Okay, great. How many of you are thinking about starting an e-commerce company, maybe a side business, maybe more, but thinking about it? So there are a few more hands. Okay, great. So I'm going to try to bring value to both of you, mostly for people who are thinking about it, who are just getting started. And then we have a great speaker, Sam, who's going to talk about how do you scale, how do you go to the next level. All right, so those are the 3 things I would like to talk about today with you. The first thing is, how do you find your niche? How do you pick the market that you want to go after? The things that you need in order to get started. And finally, the 7 principles to grow in e-commerce. Those are the things, again, that I wish I knew when I first got started. So let's talk about finding your niche. A lot of people ask me, which market should I pick? Should I follow my passion? Should I pick something that I'm passionate about? And I think the answer here is not necessary. Why? Because, sure, on one hand, it's easier to pick your passion. It's easier for you to find product. It's easier for you to talk about your products. But chances are the first e-commerce store you're going to launch not necessarily going to make it, to a big, big success. It's like a muscle you need to flex. You need to work out. You need to go to the gym before you run a marathon or you do an Ironman. You need to train a lot. So pick something that is reasonable for you to be successful. And to help you to find your niche, I came up with 5 different criteria that would help you think about what kind of product do I want to sell. So the first one is the size of the market. You don't want to go after a market which is way, way too small, too tiny, because it's going to be really hard to find customers. At the same time, you don't want to go after a huge market where all the big guys are competing for. Why? Because the CPMs are going to be way too expensive. So think about something which is like big enough, not necessarily, not everybody in the world is going to use that product. The second thing is try to pick a product that solves a problem. Why? Because it's so much easier to market it. It's so much easier to create video ads around a product that solves a problem. In this day and age, we are really short. We have really short attention span, and when people watch a video on Facebook, they want their attention to be grabbed in the first 2 seconds. If you're not able to do that, it's really, really hard to find new customers. Next is shipping costs. If you pick an item which is way too heavy, way too big, it's going to be very, very expensive, especially if you are shipping product from China. Then the price. I tried to pick a price point of less than $50. Why? Because it's a different game, it's a different skill set to sell product above $50. It requires a lot more convincing. So you have to do a lot more retargeting and warming up the audience and so on and so forth. So try to pick something which is less than $50. And the last point is pretty obvious. You want to have a high as possible perceived value, low as possible cost. And the difference will be your ability to acquire users, like your spend you're gonna have to do in order to acquire users or customers. So the higher the margin, the easier it is. Next, how do you pick a niche? How do you find a niche? Look at magazines. Go to your local stores. I think Whole Foods is selling a lot of magazines. Look at what magazines are talking about. Why? Because magazines is a really tough business. So many magazines are going out of business. But the magazines you see on the shelf are not. They were able to create valuable content that people are willing to pay for. So they pretty much cover every single niche, every single market you can think about. If you like me and you like a more like data-centric approach, this is what you do. You do a reverse lookup on all the IP address of Shopify stores. So let me explain. Every single Shopify store is using the same exact IP address. You can rank all the stores based on web traffic, which is a proxy for how well those stores are doing, right? You may not be able to compete with them, obviously, on day one, but at least it gives you a sense of like what are the kind of niches, what kind of products are being successful on Shopify today. Let's talk about the things you need. So first of all, you need to learn from the best. I just highlighted a few knowledge bases that I've used personally, and I keep using them to learn. I don't have any affiliation with them, but one of them is this podcast, which is great for media buying. It's called Perpetual Traffic. Then there is the unofficial Shopify podcast, which is great. There you go. I got the confirmation from Shopify. 2 thumbs up. Then there was this group that I really like personally. It's led by Tim Birds called Facebook Ad Buyers, where a lot of people, they share their experience buying media on Facebook. And then try to find mentors. Try to find people who are a few steps above you, beyond you, that you can learn from. I'm very, very fortunate because I have a few of those mentors, and one of them is actually sitting right here. Sam, who's going to speak after me. And every time I have an issue, every time I'm blocked, I'm reaching out to Sam and others, and I just get the help that I would not be able to otherwise. So find people who are a few steps ahead of you, maybe also people who are just at the same level that you can learn and share different tips from. Those are the products I use. I'm not going to go over the list, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the products that I'm using personally. First of all, the e-commerce platform. When I started, it was Shopify. I didn't think about anything else. It's not because we are here. I created a slide way before, but it's because it's the default e-commerce platform today. The reason why is because they have a huge ecosystem of app developers, of theme developers. If you need to create something custom, you can find easily developers on Shopify, and so on and so forth. I use different themes. Turbo is a good one. I'm going to jump a few lines below. Klaviyo is a company based in Boston that is a really good complementary to Shopify. When you start on e-commerce, you have to make a decision about, like, okay, I need to get a software that helps me do this. When it comes to email marketing, you can go cheap or you can go to a really, really good product like Klaviyo. Klaviyo is not cheap at all, but I guarantee it will make it worth it. I'm going to show you some slides later on to show it. And now let's dive into the 7 principles. The first one is going to be really, really obvious to you because it's very popular in Silicon Valley, but I'm going to show you why it's so important for e-commerce, is do things that do not scale at the beginning. What does that mean for e-commerce? It means talk to your customers. Just spend some time with them. Not only they will tell you exactly what they like, what they don't like, what they use, what they don't use, but they will teach you how they talk about it. And we're going to see how you can reuse that information. Suppliers. Find awesome suppliers. I got burned. My second store that I launched on Shopify, it was making money, it was profitable, it was great, but eventually it crashed to the ground because my suppliers were not capable of delivering consistent quality products. So spend a lot of time thinking about who are my suppliers that can help me scale. And finally, I'm a huge fan of doing your own customer support at the beginning. And trust me, it sucks. You're going to spend a lot of time responding to emails. Unfortunately, customers, when they email you, they don't usually have great things to say. It's to complain. They have an issue. But it's very important that you spend the time to respond to them, to understand what the issues are. And we're going to see how we use that. Once you do that, you want to create processes around those things. So the first thing we talk about, talk to customers, that will help you come up with campaign angles, right? For one product, you can think about different angles you want to take in order to sell this product to customers. So the more you talk to them, the more you understand their perspective, the more ideas you will have about campaign angles. You can also write a better product page, right? Understand their objections. What are the reasons why they're not buying? And try to be upfront in your product page. Once you find good suppliers, you have to define good fulfillment systems, right? I advise you to actually do a lot of things yourself at the beginning. The one thing I would say stay away from the beginning is shipping yourself, fulfillment. It may be intuitive to say, I'm only going to sell a few items a day, so maybe I can drive to the post office a couple of times a week. It's not going to be a big deal. But very, very quickly it will be, and that's the time you're not spending learning. So try to think about this process really, really early on. How can I outsource or have partners in place that can fulfill my orders for me? And finally, for customer support, once you spend a few hours answering to hundreds of emails, it will give you a lot of ideas about creating macros, canned responses. What are the most common questions that are asked? Let me create templates so later on, when I hire people who do customer support, they can use those templates and we can pretty much automate that. You can also create FAQs, and you can even improve your product page because you spend so much time reading and answering emails from your customers. I'll give you one example. One of the products I've been selling is electronics, and a lot of emails from customers, potential customers, was, does that come with a charger? And of course it did, but it was not obvious to them. So we added this information back to the product page. All right, decide what to automate and what to outsource. The goal here is to remove yourself from the non-core day-to-day operations. The way I think about it is in 3 different brackets. The first one is myself. Like, what do I need to do? What do I want to focus on? Where do I want to spend time on? The next bracket is automate. What are the things I can automate? And finally, if I don't want to do it myself, if I cannot automate, what are the things I want to outsource? Personally, I want to focus, I'm still learning a lot about media buying. So that's one thing that I do want to do myself, at least for now. Then the core task. Sometimes you need to make purchase decision for inventory. Purchase decisions can be $50,000, $100,000. I don't want to outsource that decision to anybody for now at least. And the high touch relationships with your suppliers, with your partners, even with some of your customers. Yesterday, we got an email from a customer saying, hey, I would like to purchase 40 units of the product. And the customer support specialist pinged me on Slack and say, hey, we have this question, what should I say? And I took over because I wanted to learn, why does this customer want to buy 40 units? Maybe there's something I can learn from it. Now, the things that I do to automate, one is the ad rules. So you spend a lot of time media buying. You spend a lot of time on Facebook, on Google, and over time, you're going to learn some patterns. You're going to create some rules in your head that you're doing manually, such as turn off this ad when my ROAS, my return on ad spend, is below that level. Turn it back on when it reaches to that threshold. Turn off the ad sets when I spend that much money and it's not performing well, right? Those things you can automate. You can use Facebook rules. It used to be so-so. It's a lot better now. You can use Revealbot, which is an awesome product. It's a little bit pricey. So you don't have to do that yourself, and it gives you peace of mind. I know I have this software that takes care of not spending too much money if my campaigns are not performing well. We also use things like Zapier to automate a few things that are not easy to do manually. I'll give you an example. Whenever somebody writes a review on Facebook, especially a negative review, we want to contact them. We want to reach out to them right away, right? We want to make sure they have a great of an experience as possible. So what we did is we created this app that pulls this information as soon as a review is posted and publish it on the Slack channel. And then everybody in the team, the first person to see it, will reach out to that customer. Email flows, super, super, super important. I'm going to show you a few examples on the next slide, but you want to create flows that are completely automated. These flows, by the way, are usually email. Klaviyo just announced that they are starting to support SMS on flows, so now you can also SMS your customers who opt in. The different things that I personally outsource, customer support. Now I outsource it. I have a team in the Philippines. Product research. If you are selling different products, you can also get VAs, virtual assistants, to do that for you. Any kind of data entry or any kind of repeatable task, I also tend to outsource that now. The way I usually do that is I use a software called Loom. It creates a video capture of your screen. I know you have a fan there. And then you can just share this video to your VA and say, hey, what I did once, please do it for the next 2,000 rows. And then bookkeeping, tax accounting, I don't want to touch that myself. I'd rather pay somebody who's way better than me to take care of that. All right, so those are examples of email flows that I'm doing. The one on the left is an abandoned cart email flow. So many people, when they start the checkout process, they're not going to complete it for many different reasons. Maybe they're on the phone, they get a phone call, they need to jump on the bus, whatever it is, or maybe they change their mind. What you want to do is you want to send them an email. Some people do it 30 minutes, I do it like 4 hours after they do not complete the purchase. And you just want to say, hey, there is an item for you waiting on the cart. You can complete your purchase. That's it. This email alone brought $3,000 of revenue just the last 30 days. Just one email. But you don't have to stop there. You can send them another email 20 hours later, so about 24 hours after they abandon the cart. And the second email is just a reminder. Same exact thing, but just a reminder. Another $1,000 in the last 30 days. And finally, the third email that I send, I give them a little discount code. Maybe it's a 10% off or something. And that third email, so remember, you got the first email, you don't act on it. You receive the second email, you don't act on it. You receive the third email, you see a coupon code, another $1,000. $5,000 just from this flow. It took me about half an hour to set that up, and every month, this is how much I'm making from this flow alone. Another flow that I want to share with you is the one on the right, and that one is an exit intent pop-up. So we've all seen that on websites where we're about to close a tab, and then there's a pop-up and say, wait, here's 10% off, just enter your email, and then we send you a personalized coupon. I don't do that everywhere on the store. I do that on a very specific page. So it's a subset of my store. This flow took me about an hour and a half. It's only built on Klaviyo. No other software is required. I got an extra $6,500 in the last 30 days. All right, next, I want to share with you how do I outsource, how do I find people, what do I do to interview them, and so on. So I have a 5-step process for this. The first one is I usually post the position on the website. Sometimes it's Upwork, sometimes it's others. I usually give an assessment to them because you're going to get a lot of different applications, especially if it's a very generic position. So what I like to do is I like to use the attention to detail assessments, that gives me an idea of is this person going to pay attention? And that helps me to filter out a lot of people who are not necessarily, I don't want to waste time and interview 50 people for one position. I usually pick the best and spend some time on Skype, interview them, and then I track the hours based on whether it's software, Upwork has something built in, or I use Google Sheet as well. And in the company, we only communicate via Slack, except with the partners in China, we use WeChat. You know that's the default platform over there. All right, so this is how I think about e-commerce. This is this slide that summarizes my e-commerce experience. I think e-commerce is really about 4 things. It's the store optimization. You need to create a store, optimize it. It's about media buying. It's about email marketing. And finally, it's about customer experience. When you're starting, like me, when I started, I didn't know any of those things. So you do, quote-unquote, a crappy job at all of them, but you want to put it together. You want to start something. You want to start somewhere. So you are in this first section right here. Then, once you have something, once you start running ads and you have some email marketing and you have some basic flow, you spend some time, you dive in. You spend maybe a week or 2 and you do one thing really, really well. I remember I did a crash course on media buying, and then I did email marketing and so on. And then you're going to get better and better at each of those things. So maybe you get media buying, you move to the second level, and then email marketing later on, you move to the second level and so on. At some point, if you keep doing that, your store will get better and better. You're flexing your muscle. And eventually, you want to find someone who can do it way better than you. So I'm still doing email marketing. I'm far from being great at it. You know, a lot of people are way, way better than I am. I'm still doing it because I enjoy it and I want to learn. But eventually, I know I'm gonna get like copywriters. I'm gonna get like email marketers who can really take this to the next level. Number 5, know your numbers. Why it's important? Because you want to make good decisions without spending too much time and money. This is the first thing you need to know as soon as you are putting your store up there. You want to know your unit economics really, really well. Things like how much does it cost per product? How much do I pay for fulfillment and shipping? How much do I pay per customer? How much does that cost? From those numbers, you deduct your ROAS, your return on ad spend. And you can find out your break-even ROAS. Why it's important is because if you run ads on Facebook, for example, they would give you this number in real time. So, but just looking at this number, you know whether you are profitable or not. So a lot of people do e-commerce, they don't really think about those numbers much ahead of time. It's very, very important that you do. There are other leading indicators. You know, once you look at numbers a lot on when you media buy on Facebook and others, you can really get a sense by just looking at your CPM, if it's expensive for your product, if it's not too expensive, looking at the CTR, how many people are clicking, and then you start to get an intuition in terms of like, oh, this ad is going to crush it, or this ad, I can tell, I can smell it's not going to do well because the CPM are way too expensive, the CTR is way too low. So you get a sense, you build a sense of like leading indicators from those numbers. And then the game becomes really about refine, test, repeat. You want to find, especially at the beginning, low-hanging fruits. Trust me, there are many, many low-hanging fruits when you get started. I'm still focusing on addressing many of them. And the way I do it is I have those numbers in mind. So if you use a pre-lander or pre-sale page, I have a sense of like what's the percentage, what's the target conversion rate. Same thing for traffic from your homepage to your purchase. I start to be a lot more, now that I have a lot more data, I start to be a lot more data-driven, and I instrumented everything with Google Analytics, and I know exactly, I instrument everything with UTM parameters. So for example, if you have a pre-sale page that directs traffic to your product page, maybe you have 5 different links to your product page on that page alone. Use UTM parameters so you know which link, which call to action is driving the most traffic, and then you can make adjustments based on that. There's a software that I love to use. It's really expensive. Again, you don't have to worry about until you get a lot of data. It's VWO. If you want to do A/B testing, it's probably the best platform out there. Again, I don't have any affiliation with them. All right, so now I'm going to show you how I make those, I would say, a semi-data-driven approach to find the best creative that I found, that I put together, and I scale that creative, pretty much that creative alone, to $1 million in revenue. So you got 3,000 comments, 4,000 shares. And this is what I did. And actually, I learned that from Sam a long time ago. So what I typically do is I start with creatives. Creatives being like video ads or image ads. And typically, those creatives will have different angles, but they don't necessarily have to. You can sometimes just swipe the order, right? Remember, like the first 2 or 3 seconds of your video are the most important because you need to grab the attention. So if you have a video, you can just play around with the order just to see which one will actually have the most views and will perform the best. So you test different ads. So typically on Facebook, you have one ad set. In every ad set, you have like one ad, and you spend a little bit of budget every day on each of these ad sets. Everything else is the same, the copy is the same, the thumbnail is the same, but you're just testing different creatives. And then after a couple of days, you look at which one has the highest CTR, Or if you spend more budget, which one has the highest ROAS, return on ad spend? Once you figure out which creative converts the best, now you go to the second phase, and now you're testing the different copies. Use the same creative, and now I'm testing different copies. You basically rely on the Facebook algorithm to help you figure out which combination is the best. Once you have the best creative and the best copy, now we're going to test different thumbnails. You'd be surprised if you do video ads, just changing the thumbnail of the video can have a huge impact on your conversion rate. All right, and the last thing I would like to leave you with is challenge your mindset. What I mean by that is we are only limited by what we believe we are capable of. Of course, this sounds like a really nice meme you can share on social media, but once you really internalize exactly what it means to you, that will help you reach to the next level. For me, I'll give you a story. I started e-commerce not too long ago, about a year and a half ago, and on January 20th, this was actually my second store, technically. On January 20th, 2018, I made 1,000 euros. I was focusing on the French market. So I made 1,000 euros in one day. I could not believe it was possible when I first started e-commerce. And that milestone for me was extremely meaningful. Once I reached that milestone, something clicked in my head, and I realized that I can see the path now to making $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a day. And then fast forwarding to a few months ago, I got one of my biggest day of the year was about $15,000. It didn't really strike me as much. I don't know what I was doing that day as much as I did for the first milestone. Those numbers, once you get into e-commerce, won't sound that impressive. But it's really about shaping your mindset, thinking about what am I capable of doing, and being aware that your biggest buyer for your next milestone, for your success, is actually yourself. So you have constantly to challenge that. And that being said, that's it for the presentation. Yes, question.
Hold on one second. We're going to do the questions in the mic so we can get it on the record.
Two questions. I'll bundle them together. What is your average margin, and what type of promotions have you experimented with?
So the question is, what is my average margin? And the second question is?
What promotions?
What promotion? Oh, like channels. Oh, got it. Okay. Coupon and stuff. Okay. So what are my margins? I usually shoot for a margin, a gross margin of about 30%. If you run if you spend a lot of money on media, 20% might be great. But I'm trying to shoot for about 30%. And then your second question around which promotion, I try everything. I mean, I try. There's only so many hours during the day. I can only allocate so much time on this specific thing. So I don't, there's probably a lot of room to grow. But the promotion that I've tried that worked really well is anything from email. So, a coupon code would be very, very straightforward. The holiday season is about to start with Black Friday and Cyber Monday and Christmas. So I would say there's a lot of opportunity there to, you can discount your items on your website. You can send a customized coupon. And so those are the main things. But again, I probably have a lot more things to explore myself.
Hey, David. So how can you compare Calvio to Infusionsoft, for example? Is it Infusionsoft? Because they have a pretty good hook into e-commerce, right?
Which one you said?
You heard of Infusionsoft? It's pretty common sort of.
I heard the name. I've never used it personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, I've got 2 questions. Great talk, by the way.
And there's somebody in the phone who wants to ask a question as well.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned you had a distinction between store optimization and customer experience. Could you talk about how you draw that distinction? And my second question was, you mentioned you use an exit pop-up just on one page. Which page is that?
Great question. So the first question is about, you say it was about the difference between customer experience and store optimization. To me, store optimization is all about your funnel. It's all about like, for example, how do you make your store load way faster? It's amazing the correlation between the load time and the conversion rate. So just by, one quick trick is just by decreasing the size of your images, you can make your page load way faster, and then you can increase your conversion rates dramatically. So that's an example of like, the optimization. And there's a lot of tricks, a lot of things you can do. Your second question was about which page did I use to do the exit pop-up. I'm selling product, and I have like a page for accessories that is related to this product, and that's on the accessories page that I have this pop-up, not on the main page.
Hi, I have a question about on your media buying. I see it as a creative, the headline, the copy, and so forth. Could you talk about a little bit how you test targeting the audience, that component? If you test it at the beginning, or if you're running already with a winning, like if you already know your buyer, you have like a lookalike, right? But if you don't have that targeting nailed down yet, like when do you test that in your?
Great question. Yeah. So that's one thing I didn't talk about. So the way I do it is once I find the winning combination of like creative, copy, and thumbnail, I'm going to start testing this combination across multiple audiences. So some of these audiences, to your point, would be interest-based on Facebook. And I'm going to see which one are working, which one are not. Once I have enough data, I'm going to start using lookalike audiences. So I will test both. And even if you have a lot of data, you still want to continue testing on interest-based audiences because you want to grow, you want to feed the algorithm in order to get even better data in the future. There's a person in the first row who's been waiting for a while, so I'm going to give you the mic.
Great, thank you. You mentioned Facebook ads, but do you also advertise on Instagram or Google ads or Yelp? And what product do you sell?
I sell multiple products in the fashion accessories niche. And to your question, when I say Facebook, yes, it's Facebook plus Instagram. So, yeah, so Google Ads, I just started to experiment with Google Ads maybe a month ago. So I'm really, really new at it. I know people who have great experience, great success on other platforms as well, like Pinterest and so on. Personally, again, there's only so many hours I'm allocating to this project, so I cannot test everything I would like. But Facebook, the combination of Facebook plus Instagram is where I would say a lot of attention is when it comes to e-commerce.
Whoops, my bad. Appreciate you taking the time to chat. This has been really helpful. So question on, you talked about the experiments you did for the creative. What's the ad spend you need to really get the sample size and all that stuff right?
Great question also. Typically when I start, I do $5 a day on every ad set, right? So if I have like 5 different ad sets, spend like $5 a day, so it'll be like $25 for the test per day. And then same thing, right? Same thing when it moves to step number 2, step number 3, $5 a day on every ad set. If you have the conviction, if you have more budgets, and if you are testing some ad creatives that you have really strong reasons to believe that they should crush it, they should be doing well because you have an established audience and so on, you can afford to spend more than that, and then you can get more data faster and so on. There's always a compromise between how much you want to spend versus how quickly you want to learn.
Cool. And just a follow-up, you said 30% gross margin. That seems like low. Are you adding like the ads in that as well, or returns, or?
Yes. So 30% includes any cost related to the product, the cost of goods sold, fulfillment cost, shipping, as well as the ad spend. Yeah, so that's why it's probably lower than what you expect.
Sorry, we have a question over here. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I was just wondering, how do you choose how much time to allocate, and how do you manage this against life priorities and your other jobs? Like, if you could give an example, how you manage your energy.
Work in progress. I'm not by any means really good at this. I think I would say it's all about compounding. So sometimes things will go really, really bad because something happened, right? Or I'm running out of inventory. I have this fire to solve. So I'm going to spend a few hours. I'm going to focus on that for a while until this problem is solved. I want this to be like as up and running, as operationally, in a good place as possible. And then I can switch my attention to other things, right? So because this will compound, right? Ideally, this would be like pretty much semi-automated, so I can focus my attention somewhere else. And to answer to your other question about how do I prioritize, I personally, this is very, very basic, but I have this trick that I started about a year ago, and it works really well for me. Before I go to bed in the evening, I have an app on my phone, which is like a very basic to-do list app. And I think about what are my 5 priorities that I want to do the next day, right? I don't try to optimize. I don't try to prioritize everything. It's too complicated. I have this master to-do list that encapsulates everything that I'm working on. And I'm trying to pick what are the 4 or 5 things that I want to accomplish the next day. It helps me sleep because at source I put this, you reduce my cognitive load. I put that information on the app. And then when I wake up in the morning, I have clarity about what I need to focus on today.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to have your thoughts about ad walls. I'm thinking about Fiverr and Tapjoy, these new tools that are arriving. What do you think of them?
So I used to use Tapjoy when they started 12 years ago. That was for the apps. I haven't used those platforms that you mentioned at all for e-commerce. I would not be the best person to say. I don't know.
Sorry if you already mentioned this and I missed it, but does Amazon carry the same products that you carry? And if so, how do you think about them as a competitor, either presently or in the future?
That would be a long answer. Yes, at least something. The short answer is no, they do not carry my products. And then how do I think about them? There are 2 schools of thoughts. One is you want to sell product and you don't want to worry about it. You can outsource that to Amazon. Personally, I like to build a system where I have the relationship with my customers. I like to think about building a system where I have a lot more flexibility. For example, sometimes your suppliers run out of your products, and you don't have any way to you want to scale down your ads because you don't want to drive a lot of traffic, pay for it, and then a lot of customers get pissed off. You cannot do that on Amazon. So I like to have this control, and that's why I like this world a lot better.
Nice talk. My question is, what's the A/B testing platform that you used again?
It's called VWO. It's a little bit pricey. Again, you don't have to worry about it until you have a lot of data. You need a lot of data in order to do proper A/B testing. It's called VWO.
Hi. So it's great when you're sharing about the paid marketing part. So for an early business, if they don't have enough amount of marketing spend, what do you suggest to do to lead organic traffic to our brands?
So keep in mind that you don't need to have a big budget to start with, because if you run ads, for example, on Facebook, you can learn a lot with $10, $20 a day, $30 a day at the beginning, and then go from there. Build the confidence and go from there. But to answer to your question, what would I use if I didn't want to spend anything? I would probably try to find free traffic. So I would get some bloggers talk about my product, talk about maybe give them an offer, give them a referral code, a coupon code, that they can send to their mailing list, to their audience. That's, I guess, what I would try.
Oh, wow.
Pressure.
First of all, it was amazing. I wanted to ask you about email sequences and content. So I think on a screenshot you had 3 emails as a sequence. Do you ever use longer sequences, like maybe 5 or 6? That's number 1. Number 2, how long are your emails? Do they include images? Did you see that they work better with images?
Great question. So I think the longest sequence that I have is for our post-purchase flow. This may have 20 emails. So you can go really, really deep. Keep in mind that I'm not spamming, I'm not sending those 20 emails on one day. I can wait, sometimes 30 days and then give like a coupon code or, like to re-engage with the people who purchase from you. And I've heard about way, way longer flows, right? And the other question is about images. I tend to test both emails with images. They tend to maybe have a slightly lower deliverability, just because some, maybe Gmail, Yahoo are not going to, bring this email to your inbox. I'm going to bring it to the other tabs, so it's going to be less open rate. And I compare that with emails that are just text. Right? So you can test both, and you can see the advantage of using something like Klaviyo, by the way, is that you don't need to do any coding. You can really drag and drop things. You can test things really, really easily. If something doesn't work, you turn it off.
He was so eager to ask.
This is the last one after the last.
The real last one. Okay, so I have 2 questions. The first one is, do your suppliers supply also the packaging, or do you, in any case, brand your products, or you buy as is? And the second one is, do you have any rule of thumb for the beginning? For example, add 1 product per month or 1 product per week.
What was the second question?
Which is the rate at which you add new products to your store?
Got it.
Do you prefer less products, high quality, or a lot of offer?
Yeah. So your first question is about, is my supplier also providing the packaging? The answer is yes. They don't do that directly, but they actually, they found, they have some suppliers that do packaging. We customize the packaging with our brand. We're actually not customizing the product. We could, but the MOQ, the minimum quantity that we would need to order, would be a lot higher. But most importantly, the lead time would be a lot higher as well. So instead of getting the product within like a week or 2, we get the product in like 45 days or 2 months, right? So we customize the packaging, not the actual product. And the second question is about the rate of adding new product. Thank you. It really depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to focus on one niche and sell a lot of products that are relevant for that niche, you should be trying new products all the time. I know people who try the multiple products on a daily basis. If you're trying to build, if you found a product, a winning product, and you kind of want to build a store around that, then you don't need to test a lot of products. So you can really do both.
Great, thank you. Big round of applause.